I get so annoyed with how research and science is talked about in the general public and even by scientists and researchers. I'm going to tell you a story in this video, and then I'm going to actually talk about how we should be thinking about science and research. So I'm a professor and I teach research methods at the doctoral level. And we go into these conversations. And at the beginning of the course, right, we kind of have this like, oh, yeah, science is a real thing. And then at the end, we completely change the minds of the people that are doing it. And we realize like, oh, crap, this is hard. So what's this story? What are we actually talking about here? This story is I was reading the other day. What am I talking about? I actually don't read. I was like scrolling. Who reads today? I was scrolling and this guy pops up and says, if you kiss your wife and you do that every day before you go to work, then research says that you're going to live for an extra 4 years. And at first I was like, okay. But then I thought about it and I was like, this is absolute crap. This is terrible, terrible reporting, first of all. But not only that, it's just would be bad science. People would discount this, highly, highly discount this. So why is that the case? Well, first of all, you got to understand, I'm going to tell you a little bit about how science actually works. And then I'm going to talk about why this particular finding is just flawed, right? Like I think you should discount that heavily when you see that. So how does science work, right? So you come up with an idea as a scientist, and then you send it off and you try to get other people to look at this particular idea. You come up with different findings, and people are ruthless in the scientific profession. They will discount everything that you do, and they should. That is their job. The job of science is not to prove anything. Like that drives me insane. Anybody that talks about proving something or this is what happens in the real world, I'm like, oh my gosh, I got a migraine. I have a migraine right now. You cannot prove anything in this world. You just physically cannot. And this is built into the mechanism. What we try to do in science is because we can't prove that, right? And that's how it started. Science was like, let's prove this. We can't prove anything. We can't prove that in the court of law. We can't prove anything, right? Do you think if we can't prove something in the court of law that we would like use some sort of mechanism in science that would be different that could prove things? No, it's stupid, right? Like it makes no sense. So what do? We try to refute, we try to discount, we try to throw everything at the particular finding. And, whatever it is that we can find, we're going to throw rotten tomatoes, we're going to throw tables and chairs and everything at this particular finding. And if it still holds up, we're going to say, yeah, I don't believe it, but it's a plausible thing. And then we're going to move on. And then a whole bunch of other people that are going to try to attack this thing and really, really attack this thing. And after many different tries, if it still holds up, you might say, that's a little better, but I still don't believe it. I think it's a load of crap. And then you're going to go through your whole life thinking about how that is a terrible idea and we should tear this thing apart as much as we possibly can. That's what science actually is. So what is problematic with this finding? What is going on with this particular finding? Why does this drive me nuts? Cheers. There is a lot that's going on with it. All right, so first of all, not everybody has a spouse, right? We know that. That is a finding. Lo and behold, people don't have spouses. Not everybody has a wife. Sometimes, there's many different kinds of people. Sometimes the affection that we show to other people is not the way that you might think about of like, oh, let's like smack people in the face, right? Like, let's give a big old smoochie. By the way, my wife, and I had to throw her under the bus. I love her, but whenever I go to kiss, she wants me to kiss her on her cheek. And that's what happens, right? So we're not really, every morning we do kiss, but it's not necessarily, the kiss that you think about. But, there is, okay, so it's a sore spot for me. Okay, so I'm disclosing that to the world. All right, so what I want you to know is that there is just a lot of different things that are going on. And what it's not showing is actually what the real mechanism that is going on. The real mechanism is that if you're not lonely, right, and you have a support group of people that are going to look out for you, when you go to the hospital, is there somebody, when you're sitting in the bed and maybe you're in a coma, do you have a lobbying group behind you that is going to look out for you and make sure that you live a happy and healthy life if you are incapacitated, right? That's an important thing. Another important thing is that sometimes you have more financial resources when you're together, right? Like having people together is economically cheaper. It's just economically cheaper. You couldn't get what's called scale economies by doing that. There is a lot of different factors. Now, the other thing that is really painful that almost everybody does not understand, because it's a kind of a statistical thing, the average effect, when you add up across, I don't know, probably the study that they were looking at was 10,000 individuals. The average effect says nothing about the individuals themselves. It says nothing about them. It says that this is on average, this is what we see. But on average, that has no prediction on an individual per se. This is why when you go to, and you get medication, for example, is that, yeah, on average, you show that there's an effect, and maybe it's a 10% effect, right? So what does that mean? Is that there is a 10% increase in how this actually might affect people across 10,000 people. But individually, it might have absolutely no effect at all, right? Or it might have a negative effect. It might actually harm you and do things that are not necessarily good for you, right? So this thing is challenging. Now, I want you to stick with me here, why this is challenging and what you can do about it, and think about it. Skepticism is a good thing, right? I strongly believe in skepticism, but there are other things that you can take and think about to be helpful for you, because there's real findings that are legitimately good findings that I think this is why it's problematic when you see these kind of findings, is that it leads people to believe that there's a simple way to life. And that simple way to life, if you just do all these kind of things, then it's going to work out for you. But people are going to do it and it's not going to work out for them, right? So diets, for example, we see this a lot in diets. If you stick with the, used to be, low fat diet, now it's low carb diet, whatever it is, if you stick with it, then everything's going to work. Well, it turns out that it's freaking hard to stick with these things, right? Like, you got to be a weird person to stick with anything for a long time. And it's flipping hard. So on average, it's not going to work out for you. And probably more than average, probably 99% of the people, it's never going to work out for you. It's not going to be good for you to pursue these things, because that's just a hard thing to do. That's called the selection effect, by the way. So what can you do, right? So having skepticism is good, realizing that you're pretty unique. But the key thing is to look for, is there support behind it in terms of lots of people actually believing this thing collectively, and not believing it in the sense that, yeah, you know what, this is proof, but collectively that we've thrown enough stuff at this that we are willing to just kind of let it go and not pay attention to it right now. So, something like diabetes, right? We kind of know how diabetes maybe works, right? And we've just kind of moved on collectively, but there's this whole infrastructure behind it, right? We have diabetes medication that works on some people, right? We have hospitals dedicated to this stuff. We have physicians that are spending their whole life studying these kind of things. If you see collectively a mass mobilization of resources, and this is where it takes a little bit of thought to think about this stuff. And I'm not just talking about like on your social media feed, but legitimate big organizations mobilizing and doing things. And a lot of people that are very smart, highly skeptical, looking at this stuff and saying, yeah, that's plausible. I might put some of my time and effort behind it. That is probably something that you want to pay attention to. You could still question it and you could still disbelieve it, but I'm going to give it more weight. And I'm going to say, yeah, it's more plausible with this thing, right? Like at this point, gravity itself is still kind of a theory, right? It's still, but there's so many people that are believing it, and our whole system is sort of working behind it, that we can function as a society behind this thing. And it could be totally wrong, right? We don't know understand what gravity is, but right now this functions as a good substitute, and we could sort of collectively agree that this is a good substitute to how this works. So I want you to go and think about this, right? I'm saying just be critical, think about the world, but also look at, okay, so yeah, there's a couple of people that discount this kind of stuff, right? Like they're discounting mainstream stuff. But what do they have behind them? Do they actually have a group of people that are well trained, that that understand a lot of different things? Are they actually following and paying attention to this particular stuff? And that's the key thing to think about. So am I, coming away, am I going to kiss my wife on the cheek as much as I possibly can? Yeah, I will. Do I expect it to lead to longevity and I'm going to live for an extra 4 more years? Come on. No, that's stupid, right? But collectively, if I work together with my wife and family, we try to do things that are healthy and happy and make us feel good inside. And we have really rigorous, angry discussions sometimes and arguments. And we try to work together by putting our budgets, our finances together and work together collectively. Do I think that leads to increased longevity? Yeah, I think that there actually is, but it's not the reason of like, you just gotta like do this kind of stuff and it's gonna turn into this. No, it requires god awful painful work, and it sucks sometimes, right? Like really sucks, but you work at it and you keep going. And then do I think that after 40 years of pushing towards something that works? Yeah, I do. And do I think that is going to lead to longevity? I do. I think that is actually important. Now, does it have to be my wife? Can I find a support group? Can I find all these other things in society that would help me out? Right? I can. And those things are going to be good too. All right. Take care and have a wonderful day. Bye.